try to eventually make something worthwhile on it. And okay, are you ready to start?
Let's do it.
Okay, go. I just said go, which means that now we've begun the podcast. Mike, we're on a podcast.
To our podcast.
Here we are. We are casting together, and I'm James.
And I'm Michael.
That's Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael. Sorry.
Well, Mike. I mean, it doesn't matter, really.
You sure?
Yeah. Most people call me Michael, but I don't know.
Oh.
I think it's arbitrary. Just whatever people feel like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Michael. Well, that's gonna be hard for me. I might flip.
I'll just say Mike. Then we'll say Mike.
Well, you don't have to change me up. I mean,
just call me a completely different name.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole other syllables, like twice as long, it's different letters,
Yeah.
we have, I'm in Germany, you're in Canada, and so, there's a big difference between Mike and Michael, or whatever they say over there, something like that. Because you can just say Mike,
that's true.
And so I
mean, it kind of goes with the one, it'd be a lot easier with the one syllable thing.
Yeah, I'm probably going to just say Mike
just
all
call.
the time.
Yeah, that's fine.
No disrespect or anything. I play the piano, and
I also play the piano, and that's how we know each other.
Yeah, that and coming from a small town
called St. John's,
relatively small town,
yeah.
St. John's, yes. And now we're kind of spread over the world enough in different places, and we wanted to talk about. Create some kind of conversation about music, piano, pedagogy, life, companionship, love, loss.
We take reader questions.
Yeah,
audience questions. Yeah,
all the things. This is all where it's going to go. I feel a little bit bad that my background is blurred, so I'm going to unblur it. There, look, that solves a whole bunch of problems right there.
There you go.
Because you had a very honest showing behiint you.
Yeah, actually, I'm just kind of plugging.
Judd.
I mean, this is all Leah's stuff, actually, but I'm just plugging all of her.
That's Judd Haynes' work, right?
Is it?
They look like.
I think so. Well, I don't know.
He's winning a Juno this year. I can't say he's winning a Juno, but he posted a thing. Here's a guy I don't know anything about. He seems like a nice guy. He's a graphic designer, but I think he made all those posters.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, Leah just collected them all, and we just have a whole wall of them.
Well, Judd should say thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Judd.
No, I think he should say thank you.
I
mean,
well,
I don't know.
I think it goes both ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's mutual thanks. And that, I think it's an important theme of the things that we want to talk about, like just mutual love and respect and thanks. Yeah. And I had a little idea as I was walking here to do this. I was like, well, what we want to do, I think, Mike, it's...
Say it that way every single time.
I just might. Is that we want to make the world a bit of a better place.
Yeah, that would be nice.
That's all, really.
Yeah.
That's my aim. And maybe this conversation might make in some way or other improve somebody's life, even just for a fleeting moment. That's it. But within the context of, I guess, mostly music stuff. And we tried to start this before, right?
Mm-hmm. Last year.
Yeah. And then we had a couple of conversations, and they were pretty good.
Yeah, I thought they were.
But then life became life, and kind of you moved amidst that.
Yeah, I'm in Halifax now. I'm still near St. John's, but yeah.
Did I say New Brunswick earlier? I'm sorry. Did I? Or did I say anything?
I don't know if you said anything.
Well, good.
I didn't hear anything. Anyways,
I keep thinking that Cape Breton is in New Brunswick because it has a B in it.
All B things are related.
Yeah, I think so.
British Columbia.
So, it's just British. Exactly. I thought it went well, and then just trying to find a time to get together, and here we are now, and I'm really glad that you're here.
You as well.
I'm here.
Yeah,
as opposed
it's
to
nice to catch up too.
Anywhere.
Honestly.
Yeah. So, barring everything else, we can hang out once in a while and just record it and post it and see where it goes. On the last time that we did this, we were, I think it's a really interesting way to talk about music and the way that you feel about certain pedagogical stuff. We both work with young students. You work with a bit more serious students than I do, but all students are serious in their own way, I suppose. And but we have to pick out repertoire and go through pieces, and there's a common curriculum that we all share, and libraries that we both draw from, similar composers and things. Mm-hmm. And I find there's not a lot of transparent conversation about how people use this in different contexts and scenarios, and I think this could be a cool way to kind of just discuss some of that stuff. I mean, you're a great piano player. You play so well.
Thank you. You too.
I'm not that
but
level of finesse. You're quite special. I was listening to your Mike made a recording, which will hopefully be.
Hopefully.
Well, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been sitting on a hard drive for a year now, so I would like to release it. But
so it's going to be out at some point, and it's just this beautifully played, really, really, really great. So I think your opinion on what we teach these youngsters is very valid. Mine is a much more rough and cut approach.
I mean, I think we're all just kind of trying to figure it out. It's so hard with teaching because, I mean, every student is very different. They come from a different background. Their personalities, temperaments, all of that stuff is just so varied. And it's sometimes hard to figure out. And also just, I think we talked about this in a past podcast too, that we're in two kind of different cultural environments too. And I think that, even going from St. John's to Toronto, I think even the learning or the music education is very different, or the way that it's perceived is very different. There's a huge folk tradition, for example, in Newfoundland and Labrador, but it's not really like that it's very classical in Toronto, for example. And then when we go to Halifax, it's kind of a bit in between somehow in that way, just because it does have it's like a bigger city, but it's still an East Coast place. But you were talking about that with Germany too, because I mean, obviously, you have a rich tradition and. Et cetera,
I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff over here. Obviously, you have, I mean, the history of classical music is so well steeped, and of course, you go from Leipzig, which has this amazing classical culture, to a small town, which has a different kind of culture, not better or worse, just different, and musically speaking and otherwise speaking. And I just think, having some open, honest conversations about that could be enlightening. I know that me as a teacher, I like to kind of know how other people are doing things, and how other people's students are progressing, and the struggles that they face, which are either musically technical or battling a personality, or not battling, but working with a personality, or adjusting to some special needs, which, it can be challenging if we're not talking about it. And, there's some places on forums where you can get really a lot of information, but also sometimes at any time it might be hard to find that. So, maybe over time we have guests with us here, and we can discuss all of those different things as they kind of come up. Maybe we have dedicated listeners who want to have us talk about a particular theme, and then we can find a person who is dealing with that particular theme, and then bring them here and chat about it. And I remember, in our first podcast, which of course doesn't exist, so I don't know if we can call it a podcast. But in our first little kind of trial, the pre-podcast, we picked a piece. And we kind of played it. I don't know. I don't know if we both did this back and forth, but the idea was, picking a piece from a piano pedagogical repertoire, and then giving an honest feeling of if it's great or bad, or what you can use it for, and this and that. And maybe this pre-recorded thing, and we discussed it. And I remember once I had a really bad shot of my legs in shorts.
It was just an aerial view.
Yeah, it was horrible. And so, there's a learning curve that we've already gotten past, so the people aren't going to have to deal with that. On this day, but yeah, I think it's just there's a wide range. So that's kind of some of the, I guess the main topics which we hope to kind of cover over our many conversations that we're going to have.
Yeah, several seasons.
Maybe several seasons, like for the masses of people who would like to kind of discuss that with us, around us, or to us, or completely ignore us. At the end of the day, I know that I'm going to come out enriched because spending time with you so far, just to tell the folks at home, we've known each other for a very long time, but we haven't spent that much time even in the same room.
We somehow never even really crossed paths because I think you graduated once I started undergrad.
Yeah, so we would always just miss each other. Yeah. And I think we hung out once at the Bannerman Brewery, which is an amazing brewery. Everybody should go to St. John's and go to this brewery. And there are other great breweries, but I mean, that one was great. But we hung out that night, and but it was very, very loud because there was like awesome music being played by what's that bluegrass band called? Josh's and Dave. They're really awesome bluegrass band in town, but it was a bit loud and hard to talk. But it was great. But I think that was literally the only time that we were in the same room talking to each other ever. Yeah. I mean, not ever. I mean, with the intent of it just us being together. Like, totally. I know we've been in similar, maybe same rooms, but anyway. So we're telling the folks back home that we've had a couple of virtual chats. They've been fun.
And they've been really interesting, too. I mean, I think we kind of, it's nice. It veers into all sorts of really interesting conversations. And I don't know.
I mean, as far as we're concerned. So we'll see how that resonates. So what did we achieve so far? We've talked about where we're from. We've talked about what we do. We've talked about what we hope to achieve. And we've given a bit of a backstory about us. I think we're doing pretty good.
That's great. It's like five things off the list. That's great. Yeah. We don't really have a list, but
I made a list.
Oh, you did.
well, remember I made two little. When I got here, I typed in some things when I got here.
Well, I don't have a list.
And actually, one of the things on the list is talking about the thing when I was walking on the bridge, and I thought about making the world a better place. That's what it's kind of my. I just want to make everything just a bit nicer, a bit happier, a bit good. And the other thing, it was kind of like my conversation starter for today. Have you ever heard humans being referred to as bags of meat?
Yes, actually.
But like not in a vulgar way. Like, oh, that meat bag. But like...
As bags of meat? Like in books, certainly in like writing and stuff.
Yeah, like but I'm remembering there's like a poem or something or some kind of short story, and it's about like aliens or machines, and they're talking about like how humans are like these worthless bags of meat or something.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard the term before, so
I've heard like the term of people getting mad at someone. Oh, you meat bag or something like that.
Meat bag is a lot more derogatory, I think, than bags of meat.
Bags of meat is also pretty a nasty kind of like thing. But isn't it like it was in the context from what I recall, which I don't really recall. But like there was these nice robot machines, and they were like so perfect, and like it's just so relevant now with all this AI stuff going on. You have these like creations of like these super beings that like don't rust, they can live forever, kind of. And then like they're like looking at us, and like we're just these like moving, flapping, like wet bags of meat. Like it's just isn't that strange?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the context of AI, sure. I mean, I think there's so much conversation going on about AI art, right? AI media, AI music, and it's I don't know. It's weird. I saw this. I was just reading this article yesterday about this photographer who became fairly well known that had confessed just recently that his work was all AI generated. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's an interesting. I think it's an interesting question of how far do we integrate AI into what we do? Is it still human music? Does it matter if it's still human music? et cetera, et cetera. Lots of
Yeah.
weird philosophical questions there.
Yeah, because I remember like back in school, like they were talking about 20th century music, about music being played on a tape. Like, is it okay to perform something if it's like been pre-recorded on a tape? And like
Yeah.
that kind of raised some issues for some people. And then of course, and you mix like tape with like live performances and then loops that you adjust and everything else. I think if that photographer story is, a friend of mine was telling me a similar thing, is it might be the same guy and he won some big award or something. And then he
Yeah.
said that like, it's all AI generated. And he said, but like it wasn't plagiarized because like, apparently what again, this is like 50,000 times, well, maybe once removed from my own personal knowledge, but like, apparently what the AI art thing does, it takes pixels from things it knows and it reconstructs them in new ways. So like if there's like a wave and the crest of the wave is white, then those white pixels are actually taken from other white things like the sky or
Right.
like, the window behind me. And so all the pixels are real pixels from real places, and they combine them to form these images as per whatever's asking to be generated. So, and therefore the pictures can't be counted as plagiarism because they're uniquely generated things. That it's not like someone, if you said chair and then the AI is like, oh, there's a chair, it picks up any random chair, but
Right.
like that's not, I think, what it does. I think it recreates a chair using single pixels,
Yeah.
I think. And so like if the prompt of the thing that made that was, it was a human given prompt and it was then set within a certain framework of what he was presenting it as, and then it resonated enough to win an award, then the guy used the thing correctly to win. So I mean,
Yeah, I think at what point does it become I don't know, at what point do you still have agency or claim to the artwork itself? If you,
I think so, because
Yeah.
you're the one who set it in motion. Like if we play a song on the piano, you have to choose from 12 notes, and you didn't create those notes, so you're just putting them in your own order. So like whatever you create out of it is like, or you interpret Beethoven, like you
Yeah.
do your thing, and so this is taking a really interesting turn. I like where this is going.
My friend has actually, one of my close friends has always kind of said that we classical musicians are basically just like cover bands. We play covers all the time, and
I think a
that was
better
funny.
analogy is
Yeah.
translation.
Yeah, sure.
I think because you can get like a Dostoevsky book and you can read it in, I can't read it in Russian, but I imagine
Neither
that
can I.
in Russian it's really,
Yeah.
really great.
Yeah, probably
and then you can get
amazing.
like 6 different English translations, and like some of them can be really bad.
That's true.
And then it really ruins the experience because you don't get the color or the atmosphere or the like existential angst from like what is being portrayed. And so you need an interpreter to do that. And I think also in the case of the AI thing, the guy had to select the image. I granted that I would assume that he probably generated multiple images and then
Sure.
chose the one.
Yeah.
So I think the point where it becomes no longer good is when the man himself says, I'm actually a robot. And then, because then we have a problem. Because I think that has gone too far. But
then they're sentient, and then
yeah,
we're
that's
screwed probably.
That's trouble. Like, so up until that point, in my very uneducated opinion, I think that it's fine. Because, I've been watching designers the last little while, like making logos and stuff.
Right.
And so they'll draw something on paper, a rough idea, and they'll use a digital tool to enhance the lines so that they're straight and to manipulate them so that they are perpendicular or whatever like art words people use. like that, like the
Perpendicular is
lines
a
do.
technical term.
Yeah, that's a thing. That sounds like a thing I could throw out there. And like to make it all like racialized, like so that it does all the stuff that back in the old days people actually had to have the talent to be able to do. But now, I mean, not that these guys don't have talent; they do. They're successful.
But it does
icon creators.
kind of expedite their like workflow. It makes it a lot easier.
And it makes it streamlined, and like what's wrong with expediting and streamlining workflow? You find the thing that you want to do, and you create it. You've had apart because he's the person who has to determine the width of the line and the curvature of the smoothing of the thing. And
Yeah.
so is that AI work? No. I mean, is he winning photo competitions for art? No. But I mean, what do I know about art?
It's funny to see how far this has progressed just in terms of, do you remember Milli Vanilli, like in the 90s? Was it the 90s or the 80s?
I know this name.
Okay.
Is it a name of like a person?
It was like a 2-person group, and there was a big
Okay.
scandal when we were young, or maybe a little earlier than that, where they were lip syncing on stage and the track was looping. And I just think of how far it's come since then, because we have auto-tune, we have all sorts of other electronic enhancements and digital enhancements now, and now AI is also part of this world. And that's only happened in like a couple decades or something like that.
Yeah. So it's wild, like the pace at which things are changing, and like the average. And this is the thing too, like, to who does it matter? Like, your internet population. I mean, the amazing thing is, like, Microsoft creates this tool that like can do all this amazing stuff, but then like 80% of the internet, or like, I don't know, 90% of the internet is using it to like do a role play where you're Hitler and like, and then like teach, and then they're like, and then like after like a week they have to like shut it down. Like,
this is a whole thing with like cheating or essays. People are using ChatGPT to like write essays for universities and stuff.
Yeah. Which means, so does that mean that that's bad, or does that mean that like writing, is should we just focus on doing other things, but for academic purposes like this, but like just for artistic purposes, I mean, it depends on what your values are, I guess, as the listener and as the person who's using the art. I watched one video series of a guy who used like ChatGPT to like write a rap in the style of Drake about like bananas or something, and then like he used AI music generator to like make a beat, and then he made AI like video generator to make like a music video. So then at the end, like it looked like Drake or whoever was like singing the song about bananas, and it looked like him, and
that's kind of hilarious.
It's amazing.
I think one of the things that's really interesting about this, though, is that it does increase accessibility. And I think that's kind of, more people can get involved in music making or even art making even if you haven't had, formal lessons or that kind of thing. I've seen a lot of this stuff with like, digital audio workstations, et cetera, and how, it's before you had to, traditionally learn how to play an instrument, but now there are other, electronic things that you can do, and you can still create music essentially.
Yeah, and does it make it any less of an art form? No, because it still has to be the taste to discern what is what. I mean, so yeah, like these things come into our living rooms, and I'm reminded of like Glenn Gould. Back in whatever time when he was doing a lot of his radio stuff, he was talking a lot about like how the consumer will eventually get more and more control of how to mix the music. Like he was all about, from what I recall from this bit, which we can link to in the show notes. I'm gonna make a list of show notes. We can also put that guy artwork.
I have to find that story again.
And you find the one about the photo guy. Art. But with the Glenn Gould thing, it was talking about, because he would like mix and splice and do all these things, and he was all about giving the control to the listener of how they wanted to mix it and listen to it and experience it. And I'd be really interested, because I just love the character of Glenn Gould. I just love it, and it would be really fun to see him interact with ChatGPT. Like, or Bing, or any of these things. Like, that would be, I used to dream, I was like, if I could meet any dead person, I'd like to meet, like, my grandfather was one. Like, as I never got to meet him and seemed like a really cool guy. And now it's starting to be overtaken with, like, Glenn Gould working with ChatGPT.
You just want to be a third party?
Yeah, I just want to watch. But maybe one day ChatGPT can like engage this themselves, because that's not so dangerous or so violent. But yeah, that's anyway. Meat bags. That was my.
We're all just meat bags. That was the
yeah.
the
We're
whole
all
point
just
of that.
bags of meat, and the AI is all awesome and everlasting and good. So that has to do with music a bit. We made it be about music. So that's okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
We stayed on topic for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Do you want to talk about anything specifically, like what's going on in your musical life right now that might be interesting, or like in musical teaching, problems? Do you have any problems? Any things that are paining you? I mean, musically, like not like personally.
Well, let me tell you.
I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think everything is going well. I think that the kind of internal struggle I always have is with beginners, and in terms of, developing a really strong foundation. I feel like sometimes I feel like I can have, I don't know, it's just such a long time ago that I was a beginner, and even if I've trained in pedagogy and done all this stuff, I feel like every single time it's so tricky to translate that knowledge to students, but also I feel like I have blind spots a lot of the time in terms of how to actually aggregate all of this stuff together into something that's coherent. I feel like I'm just giving them here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a thing, and then they I don't know, I think sometimes it's hard to just kind of put it together in a package. So just developing beginner foundational technique and stuff like that, I find that just really tricky.
Yeah, I also find it really, it's such a burden, not a bad, like, it's just like, that what you're doing is affecting how this person is going to approach and be able to experience music. And, especially kids, like, you want them to have a great experience, and you want them to just love it and get inspired. And there are so many different approaches of ways of doing things that it becomes kind of like, it becomes kind of more a handicap sometimes when you have too many options. And then also, when you find a way that really works with one student, of course, going from student to student, the situation can be different. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh God. And, I wanted to get way better at teaching beginners also by the time that my son, who's now 6,
are you teaching
at the age?
Your son?
No. I mean, I try. What I've done with him is I've done my best to, and my wife as well, because she's also a piano teacher. We've exposed him to lots of great music, and we've given him the choice to play, but I'm not about ready to like force him to practice, because I think if we weren't musicians and the teacher was external or something like this, then I would have no problem to say, well, you got to do this to get through it. But because we are, like, I don't want to like force it upon him. So this is really weird leniency. But sometimes he gets super inspired. Like the kid is like, I got a great ear, and he loves it. But so when the moment strikes, he'll do a whole bunch of things that are super great. He'll listen a bit and let me help him, but typically he doesn't like me correcting him very much. Or
of course.
And again, I don't want them to have this kind of negative, like needing to please us or to appease us or to So it's a really delicate thing. But I wanted to be better, so that when I knew that when he was older, that if he had interest in doing it, that I'd be able to show him this is the way that you do it.
He could pursue it.
And this will A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. And I feel like I know a lot better now where the letters kind of are, but it's just, I just don't know like what's always the best sequence to do. And this is one of the things with one of my new beginners. One thing that I've done, well, it was your idea actually for me to start a Discord channel for Più.
Right.
Thank you for that, by the way. That was a really
course.
great idea. And so one beginner, he's been posting every week the video of the pieces, these little pieces that he's learning in this book. And this process has made it kind of a social experience for other parents, because like, oh my God, this is so much fun to kind of follow along this. And it's like, yes, it's cool because, and then maybe other kids can also watch and see what others are doing. Mm-hmm. And then, Oscar was at his lesson yesterday. And then he went home and he wanted to play the piano right away because he wanted to be able to do what this other kid had been spending months doing.
Right, yeah.
And so I feel like, and this is the kind of like dark spot that I find that I want to kind of shed light upon, like something that maybe we can do is like show different parts of the learning phase of different students. It can quickly become oversaturated and overbearing. Like we don't have time to watch each person's students do these things.
Yeah, for sure.
But if there were a way to kind of like bring to light the process in different cases and then just kind of observe that, and then like maybe you had a really hard lesson, then you could say, hey, can you check out like the lesson from like January the 3rd and just like give me your opinion on like this 30 seconds that happened here, like what would you have done differently, and have these kind of conversations. I think this would take a lot of the pressure off of us as individual teachers who are private, like you're teaching on your own essentially, right? Like
yeah. I teach at a school here, but yeah, it is.
But it's but it helps because even if you're teaching at a physical location with others, the rooms are all separated. And
that's true. It's all
there's
one-on-one.
Not a lot of chance to kind of coordinate, and it's really hard to kind of explain like what is going on. It's just kind of a longer story kind of a thing, and I think. Yeah, because that phase is one of the most important ones because it's based on that if the kid continues or not to like the upper stuff, or even just to kind of keep playing. And if you knew that and of course as you teach more, you get more experience with these beginners, I guess, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you feel better about kind of where they're leading, but. I think there's a way to kind of use to create a common space where we can help each other. Because I think even just conferring with us, like I don't have any big ideas, but maybe when I watch you do something, I'd say, oh, maybe how about this? And then and that mixture might be what you need. Or you'll be like, no, definitely not that. I say, yeah, okay. But because that's the kind of conversation that I find really hard to have with people.
Did you start with Suzuki by any chance, or anything like that, like group-related lessons? I
did start a group-related thing. It was the Music for Young Children.
Okay. Because I never really had that. I was always in private lessons. I think this is kind of just the plight of pianists a lot of the time. And I just had a student recital last week, and I had some students just really inspired by listening to the other students play. But again, that only happens a few times a year. Yeah. They never really see each other otherwise.
Yeah, so we've talked before about like this idea of getting these Zoom classes where the kids from like here and there can meet each other on Zoom and play for each other once in a while. But as it hasn't happened yet, it's clearly difficult to organize and to put together. But I think also just by lowering the expectation of the productional quality and also like the outcomes, it might lead it to happening. And when things are happening, I think that's a good thing because. Yeah, the social aspect's really great, and piano is such a lonely instrument.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It really is.
So, but it's also a very good instrument. So it's yeah. So but I totally hear you on that. I think I would really maybe be a fun episode to kind of sketch out a discussion about a couple of beginning students. I could take one, you could take one. And we could take extracts of the thing and just kind of especially a problem situation, when it's not going so well. And kind of just see, check in on it for 10 or 15 minutes and discuss it. And also, now obviously a lot of piano teachers have figured this out. Some studios are just this master teachers who are just churning out top level things all the time. And then the question is well, how much is the parent's responsibility? How much is the teacher's responsibility? How much is the student's responsibility? How strictly do you enforce that? Those who enforce really strict policies get really great results, I find.
Yeah, and I'm not a very intense person either, and I find it hard to actually have that kind of, system with young students, especially because, we want them to have a certain positive association with the instrument, I find that sometimes that can be a really big deterrent. I remember having a very strict teacher for my beginner lessons, and I might have cried every week and had a really bad time in my first year, and really didn't want to play piano at all until I was older.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's a really tricky situation, and it's hard because I don't know. It's also hard to choose now that knowing different types of pedagogies and different types of curricula that you can pursue. I think I don't know. I think even depending on the genre of music that you want to explore, it also just changes the way that we have to teach the students too somehow a little bit.
Absolutely. Like, a lot of the time the approach was classical. You took piano lessons, you're going to play like minuets and Reinecke or Reinagle or whatever, like all these like little pieces like these, but realistically these days kids are, some classical path is great. And I feel like finding out different approaches that resonate with different kind of groups of people, not to exclude one or the other, to separate them, but just to kind of find a common ground of like having a good technique while still playing pop music, and then learning about chords, and then while then learning classical pieces and analyzing them in a similar kind of a way. And there's a lot of hybrid programs which do a lot of these things, and some of them with great success.
Yeah.
And just watching how people who are mixing that and getting really great results is again, it's really hard to tell though, because some of the people who run like these like $1 million studios and stuff, and they have like these big online followings, you go to their actual students and like they're playing okay, but there's a lot of sacrifice being made for the wow of the thing. So like
absolutely,
and so who gets to decide like what is real and what is like a bit, cheating is the wrong word, but like to kind of make a relevant approach. And of course, it's always going to change from student to student. So how do we as teachers who have our own particular kind of pigeonholes, like make ourselves as versatile as possible while giving as holistic a thing to and letting people find their comfort zone?
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, also, sometimes there has to be a bit of pain to learn, because like it is hard to do, and
totally.
And when you're facing your limits, you're going to be struggling, and you just have to like work through it, and then you learn a great work ethic. But as life becomes so stressful in so many different ways around us, I think, it's been my approach here anyway, because here the threshold of like high performance is rather low. Not it's just not a big emphasis on like playing Rachmaninoff concertos or anything like this.
Yeah, sure.
And so I'm usually seeing these kids from like elementary school to high school and adults who are just burnt out. And here they come and they play, and some make little progress because they just really are. The workloads are quite insane.
Yeah, with school and like extracurriculars and everything like that, you mean?
Yeah, well, it's just with school, basically. Yeah. Like, because, people have to realize, too, you have to choose your extracurriculars. You can't, like, be in a million things and expect to succeed in all
exactly.
of it. But I think there's a way of, like, making meaningful progress that'll one day ignite a spark and say, hey, I actually really... And then a lot of them then start finding more time to play whatever music it is that makes them happy. And I think that's like a healthy 21st century piano teacher goal. So maybe we can, I think
that this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, certainly in the last few years too. It's just, what, if we're, being very systematic in teaching these students with this very, very, I don't want to say strict, but this kind of a classical curriculum, what are we really training the students for? If it's for a career as, you know, a piano soloist or something like that, I mean, I think that that's kind of a tricky thing to both. I mean, I think that it's just kind of a tricky thing for both students to perhaps aspire to, but also realistically, I mean, just those types of careers aren't really a kind of thing anymore. I don't know if that's something to say on camera, but like it's, you know, like even as a freelance musician, like most of the time, a lot of the stuff we do is, you know, a lot of stuff I do is collaborative. I play probably a quarter of my gigs are solos, maybe even less than that. And yeah, I mean, I think if we're training students for this kind of thing, how many of them are actually going to pursue music as a career, certainly? And if they don't, then what kinds of tools can we give them to help them succeed throughout their lives or their enjoyment of music? I don't know. Yeah. If that makes sense.
I mean, I have a few things to say. Like, I mean, whenever a student comes with me and says, oh, I mean, I don't discourage, I do discourage them from being professional musicians. Like, no, don't. I mean, like, it's a...
Stop playing.
If you want to practice very much, great, do it. I think, but yeah, like that genre of like trajectory is like, it's a very dangerous one. It's very cautious to be, and maybe we're just not getting those students who are like clearly, okay, this guy is the next whoever, or the lady, or person. But you know, I think there's a strong value in learning how to do something very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then because music is such a great example, like of like if they want to go to school, say, well, you know, I would cautiously say, okay, well, you know, you never want to discourage anybody from like achieving their full artistic potential. You want to encourage them to absolutely do everything, you know, to do that. And but learning how to really work on yourself and to push your limits and to balance what it takes to do that is like is a huge life skill that is used everywhere else. I have, you know, and you probably too have friends who are like, oh, I did this performance program and then I went to like law school, and it was in comparison, it was just like it was so much easier than like performing like Chopin etudes that like, and now there's a super successful like lawyer. Or then you go the other route and you have a guy like Igor Levit or something, like who's like a piano player in Germany right now, who's like pretty
his Beethoven Sonata albums are very, very, I mean, he's very, very good.
He's fantastic. Yeah. And what he has, and like, I think he, through his artistic achievements, he also has a lot of political things he wants to, you know, he cares about the environment. He has all these different, I'm not an Igor Levit specialist, but I know that he's very outspoken and very well connected, and he uses his artistic platform to give him respect on a world international stage. And I think this is also something great. So if you learn how to craft your craft to a level that is like at the top of the mountain of what it is, then you may also earn the respect of others to hear what things you have to say about things that are outside the realm of music. And I think that this is a great thing to aspire towards. Like, you know, we're not going to be Arthur Rubinstein just going around the world getting gold bars and then going to casinos, which would be awesome.
Gold bars,
but
yeah.
Man, his biography is the coolest.
I never read it. Oh
man, you got to get into it. It's like it's a treasure trove of like these stories. I don't know how politically correct it all is, but it's such a picture. You know, you picture in Paris in the 1920s, and like it's his life. Like it's just the coolest mix of stuff, and but I think using that as a platform, you know, there's definitely things to encourage going down that route. So like. And because, as you know, like to achieve it, you have to really
sweat,
overcome so much, and so I don't know. I know exactly what you mean about like because most
I mean
of
that
we have.
Yeah, sorry, I mean that in the context of also just teaching young students too.
Yeah.
Just because and trying to develop their interest. But you know, it's kind of a weird thing because I feel like I don't know. Maybe this is just purely from my own personal experience, like you start to become interested in things you get good at. So it's like a weird chicken and egg thing. I don't know if you can start with interest necessarily. Well, maybe you can, but once you start to get better at it, then you start to get really interested in something.
Yeah. So we just got to get our kids and young adults finding those scenes of inspiration that will help carry them to the next wave.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a cool place to end the podcast for today. It seems like a nice kind of cadence.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's say an official goodbye.
All
Goodbye,
right.
podcast listeners. Goodbye, Mike Cowell.
There you go.
And I think we've talked about a bunch of stuff that maybe comes forth in other conversations, and we're gonna post it. We're gonna say the hell with it and say, people might want to listen to it, and we can eventually talk about actual topics. But
Yeah, exactly. This was just free form. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording.
Let's do that.
Okay. All right. And I'm gonna stop this